In the quintessential center of culinary delights that is Louisiana, you'll find a shop near Baton Rouge that goes by the name of Hopkins's Delicatessen. The shopkeep has been in business since 1903. At least, that's what the sign says. The truth is that the shop and the butcher who runs it have only been around since 1978. Yet the butcher knew that to get a better crowd to come in, he had to fool them into thinking it was a classier establishment than it was. Jacob Hopkins was well known for his delicious cuts of meat. He was able to fund himself from just a few sausage links a week. Now, with his business booming, and never seeming to run out of steam, Jacob had found that he could sell the most exotic of meats. From ostrich to gator to free-range chicken, Hopkins sold it all. Yet there was a particular market for which Mr. Hopkins kept under the table, almost quite literally. You see, in 1978, it was much easier to get away with killing a drifter, as no one went looking for them. This was something that Mr. Hopkins found out rather early in his life. At the ripe age of 24, when his butcher shop was barely even a whisper of a thought in his mind. Young Jacob had been doing a lot of cheap labor, as it was difficult in those days for a black man to run a business that wasn't less than savory. Yet he always had a dream of running a kitchen, a restaurant, anything that would keep him near the finest of flavors that the world of cuisine had to offer him. It was late November while he passed a dark alleyway on his way to one of his many odd jobs. He was unassuming, wearing somewhat tattered work clothes, but doing his best to scrape by. His shoes had holes, his shirt was stained, and his hat was falling apart. This never discouraged him from dreaming about his own fancy restaurant. In fact, it only served to make those dreams bigger. In America, anything was possible for a black man, something he was finding out. Being in Louisiana helped cultivate his sense of taste with the blends of flavor, the scents, and the spices. Jacob Hopkins's mind was on food when a man whispered to him in the shadows under the Louisiana lights. The man's face was obscured by a baseball cap. He didn't speak, only gestured to Jacob to follow him. The man, as far as Jacob could tell, was white, and he didn't want any trouble, but, curious, he followed the man. The man led Jacob deeper into the alleyway, where he stopped and said, "How would you like to make a good deal of cash fast?" Jacob, never being one to miss an opportunity to work, was even more curious now. Would he have to be smuggling drugs like in the movies? Would he have to rough someone up? Would he have to escort someone? Jacob had done 2 of those things, and much more, in order to make some quick cash. He wasn't proud of it, but he wasn't particularly feeling guilty about it either. He was just a man strapped for cash. The man continued. "My name is Isaiah Montgomery, and I have a business proposition. I need something taken care of, and you look like the kind of man who gets things done. Can I rely on you to dispose of something for me?" "Like what?" was the reply. "Like a dead man's body. It needs to be done in a particular fashion. It's to send a message, you see, and we need someone to make the preparations." Jacob paused for a moment, unsure of what to say next. The man held out a large stack of bills, seeming to range from hundreds to 20s. It was more cash than Jacob had ever seen in his whole life working odd jobs. Enough to start a business for himself even. His very own restaurant. "Payment up front if you agree," continued the capped man, looking rather nonchalant holding the money. "If you don't say yes, there'll be plenty of other mooks out there who would gladly take the cash for the job. I already had 6 hopefuls, 6 naysayers, but you look like a smart kid. You think you can handle the job?" Jacob could only see the future and the fat stack of cash, and without knowing what else to do or say, he took the man's money and shook his hand. "How you need it to be done, sir?" asked Jacob with a grin. "You know anything about how to cut meat?" The man eyed him thoughtfully, waiting for a response. "I don't know much other than what my mama done taught me about butchering a pig, but I'm a quick learner." Jacob held up his head, nodding to the man, showing his newfound confidence in the plan, never even thinking about the moral implications. "Hey, that's a good answer, kid. I like that. Now, how about you follow me? Your future awaits. Oh, and, one other thing. Welcome to the family business." Time ticked faster than ever. The Montgomery family was originally based in Louisiana, he learned later that night. As morticians, they developed a way of smuggling in drugs and other stuff through coffins. However, every once in a blue moon, someone would need to disappear. This was easy for the family. They owned their own personal graveyard. Yet there was the occasion when an offense was so large it required retribution. Jacob had been spotted some time ago, Isaiah explained, while he had been working in a soup kitchen. They saw the way he worked with the food and decided he was the guy to seek out. A man with little means and big dreams was easy picking in their line of work, and it paid off in many ways. Isaiah brought Jacob to a nearby storage house, which smelled rank, but Isaiah explained since they had found a base of operations inside a slaughterhouse, the smell of blood would mask the smell of dead bodies. It was a brilliant plan at the time, and was by all means a delicate process. "This is the first time we've ever needed someone like you to help us. See this man?" Isaiah gestured to a man who was strung up to a meat hook, upside down, his clothes missing, his throat slit. "He thought he could come in here and offend the boss, Papa Monty, as we like to call him. Turns out the guy had been trying to get into our operations working for the police. When Papa Monty found out about that, he ordered us to give them a big old feast in honor of their hard work and determination. So we wanted you to serve up something good for Papa Monty to serve his guests." The smell of blood and flesh was not unfamiliar to Jacob, and by all means he should have been retching from the sight of a naked man upside down like a slaughtered pig. Yet something else stirred inside him instead. Something deep, dark inside of him, which made him bypass the primal urge to run. It was an urge he could not seem to satisfy in life, something which he could never explain. It was opportunity, plain and simple. Jacob wanted the opportunity to show his worth through cooking, so he could live his passion and make a great name for himself. The American dream. Here he was, living it. "I got just the right idea for it, too. It's gonna be so good, even you'll want to taste of it when you smell that heavenly aroma rising out of that pot, Mr. Montgomery," laughed Jacob, never once taking his eyes off the naked man's body as he looked for the best cuts of meat. "That's what I like to hear, kid. Someone who not only does his work well, but with a gusto befitting a master. Now, when you get to them bones, we may run into an issue." The voice came from behind Jacob. It belonged to a somewhat older man in his mid-50s. He had a clean-shaven face, a full set of dark hair, and piercing blue eyes. Standing before Jacob was Papa Montgomery himself. "Papa, how are you, sir?" asked Isaiah politely. "I'm doing well, better now that you found such a perfect man for this job. I'm proud of you, Isaiah. You've proven time and again you've been a valued asset to our team, and you will be rewarded greatly for your contributions. Of that I guarantee. The same will go for you, Mr. Hopkins, if you show me that you got what it takes. The older man said as he held out his hand to Jacob. They shook, and Jacob noticed that his hand was like a vice grip. Nice to meet you, Mr. Montgomery. Jacob smiled naturally, still awestruck by the opportunity to lay his hands on the body and get to work. Please, call me Papa Monty, everyone does. Well, Papa Monty, you don't have to worry yourself none about them bones. I got an idea for a broth that will flavor the meat so you'll be asking for more. I'm thinking of making a sausage out of this fella and making a flaming pot of gumbo for y'all to serve. Just need the key ingredients, all. Jacob was practically bouncing on his feet, looking with bright eyes. And what, pray tell, is the key ingredient? Papa asked, smiling now. Jacob's enthusiasm was infectious, it seemed. Why, a big old part of Louisiana love. Jacob roared, laughing. After showing Jacob the basics, he took off on his own, making the most delicious cuts of meat in all of Louisiana. And for 35 years, he's been making the same cuts with the same amount of gusto as when he first started. His flavors are always getting better. His cuts are always the same. Everything in the butcher's shop is perfect. He still works with those morticians, and they use him far more often now, supplying him with far more than the ostrich and buffalo. The police will never know, as the ones who investigate disappear, oddly never to be heard from again. Yet Hopkins' Delicatessen always catered at their funerals to remind them of who was really in charge. So when you go, be sure to try the gumbo and jambalaya. Their kick is the best you'll ever taste. Just be sure that when you go there, you go with a family or friend. Because if you go in alone, there'll be no telling what you come out as. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, it is I, the RightHandofDoom. You know, I wrote this story not too long ago. Actually, it feels like forever ago now. This was back in 2013 or 14. Actually, probably closer to 2012. It's been so long. It's a great little story that I love being able to perform as often as possible. I don't get to do it very often. And you'll see that this particular story that I wrote is not actually published anywhere. It was originally on the Creepypasta network, but as it is no longer available, except through me. The only other person who's actually read the story was Mr. Creepypasta himself, which I'm very proud of. But I figured I'd give it my own twist on, as it was always, in my mind, meant to be read with a Louisianan accent, which I hope was serviceable. Anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm having a lot of fun doing this for you guys again, especially now that I'm out of work. And as a gentle reminder to see if maybe you guys would be able to contribute to my Patreon, or if you would be able to donate for my GoFundMe. Any little bit is very much appreciated. I know that these are hard times for all of us, and I don't want to beg, but I do want to be able to put out as much content as possible, and to do that I need a roof over my head. We'll be able to make it to the next month, but after that I'm not quite sure. One thing I have failed to mention in either of my videos, Tuesdays and with the update, is that with the idea of getting a job, my new set schedule may be subject to change, which I pray it won't be, and if it is, it won't be disrupted for very long. In either case, I just want you to know that I will continue to try and do updates, but if I'm working and doing my counseling internship, it's not going to be likely. If you want to see more content, now's kind of the time to let me know. If there's a story that you want to hear me read, if there's something that you want to see on the channel, if there's something else you want to see, go ahead and leave a comment, and I'll try to get to it as soon as possible. And thank you again for stopping by and taking a listen. And as always, sweet dreams and pleasant nightmares. Subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, the scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. With no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world, he was alone with his thoughts. The first time Grandpa invited me to the basement to see his safe. It was massive. Apparently, the original owner told him that the house had to be built around it. There was no way it could have been brought in afterwards. When I asked him what was inside, he just smiled and said, "Maybe I'll tell you when you're older." I remember being frightened by that smile. Everything about my grandfather frightened me. To be honest, I was never able to put a finger on why, but the feeling was real. I dreaded whenever Mum said we were going to visit. Every time Mum and Dad were there, his housekeepers would wait on us, hand and foot. Even at an early age, I noticed how they seemed intimidated by my grandfather, and were quiet, timid, and unwilling to speak unless they were spoken to. It was almost like they'd been traumatized. When I was 13, I learned an unsettling fact about the housekeepers. They were, in fact, his wives. The grandmother I'd known, who died when I was very young, was merely one of 9. Mum didn't want to explain the whole thing to me. I could tell she was afraid of him too. When I asked why she'd chosen to keep in touch with him after Dad had died, she told me I needed a male figure in my life. It sounded strange to me, but I never pressed the issue. On the day before my 16th birthday, Mum and Grandpa wanted to take me hunting. I absolutely